Namaste, dear friend. It is Sahara Rose here, and welcome back to the Highest Self podcast. This is episode 6. Oh my gosh, since starting this podcast, like the other day, it's really been on fire, and I am so lucky that a dear friend of mine just happens to be in town in Los Angeles. She interviewed me for her podcast. She came on my Movement is Medicine retreat in Costa Rica. She has been a client of mine. She's been a friend of mine. She is an inspiration of mine, and I am so excited to have her here with you guys today, sharing her experiences about finding the healer within herself. Welcome to Sabrina Riccio, aka Shamanessa Godessa.
Hey! So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
This is like a full circle. Like you were like my second guest, and now like we're sitting here in your apartment.
I know, and like the last time I saw you, we were sitting in our living room in Costa Rica. So this is trippy, but not, of course.
It's just perfectly divinely guided.
Yes. So, oh my gosh. So you were my first official interview of Highest Self podcast. So cheers to that. And the first question that I'd like to ask you is, what makes you feel like your highest self?
I am in my highest self when I am authentically living my truth. And what that means is something, that feeling inside, knowing that I am in alignment with the divine, with my guides, with my desires, my beliefs, my values, and I'm going after what I want with ease and grace, and in that space of total surrender. And when I'm in my highest self is actually when I feel balanced in my masculine and feminine energies, where it's the balance of the hustle and the flow. That's when I'm feeling my highest self, and not just being like, oh, I'm going to be super masculine and go after this. It's like, no, I'm also allowing myself to be very receptive and allowing myself to receive and be in that space of allowing. Because especially as teachers and as healers, like we give so much that sometimes we have a really hard time to receive. And we need to be able to receive in order to see balance in the universe. So when I'm allowing myself the need to like, I don't need to control all this, and I can just like give it up and allow it to come, rather than being like, I have to go after this, but being able to have that discernment between when to go after and when to like slow down and allow things to come to me, that's when I'm in my highest self.
Oh, wow. Well, I absolutely love that. And you're just hitting all of the nails in the head of what I talked about in the past few episodes of balancing your feminine and masculine energy to become your highest self. And I love how after everything you say, you always say with ease and grace. And I think it's really important to add that distinction in, because so many times we're like, I'm going to be my best, I'm going to get this all, and we don't add in the with ease and grace.
No.
And it doesn't matter if you hit all these check marks. If it wasn't easy and graceful, then what's the point of exhausting yourself to do all of these things?
And I've been there.
We all have.
That was my greatest teacher. There's been points where I've gotten myself to extreme exhaustion, that dis-ease was born in my body. You know, last year and last May, I was in the hospital with gallstones. I was struck by lightning. You know, I've had all of the diseases that I've experienced have been around my throat chakra since I was born. I was born,
and you're a kapha dosha as
I'm
well.
a kapha dosha, and I'm a Gemini, so that my ruling planet is Mercury, and my ruling moon, my moon is in Virgo, so I'm a double Mercury, because Virgo is also ruled by Mercury. So I'm a natural born communicator, and so to be able to have this like whole throat thing and voice, and I think that's been me healing a lot of past life trauma of speaking and living my truth. And so now all of that is really arising and coming up, so that it's time for me to stop playing small, and it's time for me to start living my truth authentically with gust and with confidence, and really just being able to like exuberate that with such that ease and that grace, and that like nothing can really, like if I'm in my truth, then everything outside of me is just a reminder that like everything that we're seeing is just all part of our past thoughts. Like the world that we see around us is all part of our past thoughts. Like because the now, in this now moment is like right here, right now. But everything that we see, like beaches, we recall that, or like spaces like this, we recall that. So a lot of that is like knowing like the past, like things that are coming at you, it's like, oh, because my habits up until now were like shit.
Mm-hmm.
My thoughts were just like beating up against me. So of
Mm-hmm.
course I'm going to manifest that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just being more aware too of the way that I speak and showing up and being able to show up knowing that like when I'm in my alignment or I'm in my highest truth, like, oh yeah, I'm showing up and I'm being divinely guided and I have all of my guides around me like supporting me
Mm-hmm.
and like protecting me, and also just knowing that like I am a child of the universe
Mm-hmm.
and I am that love. Like that's so important. That's so important.
Absolutely. And I think everyone listening is super curious. Like how did you even find out about these spirit guides and these protectors that you had? Like how did you begin this journey?
Well, ever since I was a little girl, like I grew up Catholic, like in a pretty strong Catholic family. And I went to Catholic school for 8 years, and I've experienced death since the age of 3. So when I was 3 years old, my cousin died at the age of 2 of leukemia. And so, you know, it was always like angels around in that space. My aunt owned an angel store in Carlsbad. You know, my family is from Italy, so it's just like it's just part of the culture of like being guided with like Archangel Michael or like certain saints, things like that. So I've always had that really deep connection. Like Mother Mary was always like, I was always very connected with her. My middle name's Maria, so there's always been that connection. And for a while, like I was really, when I was a kid, like parents of my friends were like when we graduated like elementary school or middle school, they'd gifted me books about God guidance. So they all saw that like I was gonna be on this path, and I was like, you know, 12. So I was like, why am I getting this gift when everyone else is getting like cooler gifts? So I shut it down for a long time. And then I found God again at work at a rave. I found God again at my first rave because well, I was working with MDMA, which is actually really interesting because they're showing a lot of studies right now how MDMA is helping with PTSD and trauma and depression and all those things. And at the time, I was extremely depressed. Like, I had my best friend committed suicide. My grandpa passed away 2 weeks after that. I experienced a lot of death in my life. And so then when I found MDMA, it was like, whoa, like, I'm connecting to God for the first time, like, really connecting on a deeper level. Because everything I was learning in Catholic school was a lot of shame and a lot of that stuff. But, like, I still had my guides kind of, like, quiet there. And then I shut it down, and I was really depressed. I ate a lot. Like food was my coping mechanism, and I allowed myself to get to like 200 pounds because it was just like a way, it was like just protection. And then when I was in the music industry, I was like, wow, like I thought that was going to be my path, and like I was in it and I loved it. I would interview DJs and travel to all these festivals and things like that. And then it got to the point where the partying went too much. And and then I had a really difficult LSD trip, and then I got struck by lightning. And so it was just like that whole reset of going back and being like, okay, like back to basics. And through yoga and sound healing, that really allowed me to get back in my body and connect again and be really healthy. And when I did this like 3-year sabbatical after getting struck by lightning, it was a real opportunity for me to go deep in my soul. And because I didn't allow anything else, I had to stay away from friends. Like, it was just, like, so much of my own shit that I was just, like, I can't pick up on everyone else's because I was so hypersensitive after being struck by lightning. And so I read over 100 books in 1 year, just, like, self-help books, and, like, connected with my guides again, and then traveling to like Thailand, and after like listening to like You Need to Go, traveling to Thailand and working with John of God in Brazil. That was really like connecting with my guides even deeper, but then just realizing that everything around me, I'm being guided all the time. Like this thing that I'm really working on putting together a program right now is called Spirit Speaks to Those Who Listen. And it's just to really allow yourself, when you're present, that's when you're seeing all the messages coming through. Whether it be through plants, through animals, through a song. Like, it's very subtle.
Exactly.
So you have to be able to be aware and like open to receiving those messages. And then once you're aware and you ask the universe for signs and stuff too, like numbers are a huge thing for me. So I do a lot with like license plates. I see numbers on license plates, and I've got like this Doreen Virtue like angel number app, and I'll be like, what does this number mean? And then it'll be like a message. I'm like, okay, cool. So like I'm in constant communication is the best thing I can say, because I know that like the world I see around me, like it's just a figment of my past. It's a figment of my imagination, and it's like part of the human experience. And so while it's great to be really spiritual and all those things, it's really important to have your feet on the ground and to be human and to not beat yourself up for where you're going or what you've done, because you are doing the best you can based on your level of awareness. That's what my teacher Deepak Chopra taught me, was just like, we're doing the best that we can based on our level of awareness. And I heard that, like, I read that actually, right, like the week after I had my lightning accident. My LSD, my really difficult LSD trip, and that's been like a huge caveat to how I see people and things now. It's like everyone's doing the best that they can based on their level of awareness. My guides are here to help me, and I just have to like stay in my own lane, but still send like good intentions out to make sure that like the people that I love are also feeling protected and safe. And the thing is, as a teacher, we have to make sure that we're not taking on everyone else's stuff too. So I have to always ask my guides, like, hey, handle this. Because like sometimes like we're not here to fix people. We're here to guide people. And so it's like we have enough of our own stuff too, and we have a lot going on. And of course it's great to help people, but we don't have to do it by ourselves, because that's where it gets really egotistical too. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like when people come up to me and it's like, oh, heal me, or like you healed me, I'm always like, like put on the brakes. Like I'm just here to guide you. I'm here to be a conduit, but I'm not here to heal you. Like you are here to heal yourself. And I think that's where conversations are also changing around too. It's because we have to stop, like we are our own guru. Yes. Like you are the guru you've been waiting for. Like you are the guide you've been waiting for, and you become that guy when you start to connect more with your body and your intuition and have that relationship with what we have. and being able to, what's in this moment right now is enough.
Wow, well, so many key points. But one thing that I really want to talk more about, that I talked about in a previous podcast episode, was about the signs. So I talked about how when you're kind of not in the flow that your life should be heading in, the universe starts giving you signs, and it begins as whispers. And no, that's not the right way, head this way. And then it turns into nudges, and then it turns into a slap, and then it could turn into like a car accident or being struck by lightning, literally. I couldn't think of more of a universe. I don't want you going there. So what advice do you have for people to just become more aware of the universe's whispers before it turns into lightning strikes?
Be present. Like, we get so caught up in our head and we future trip so much that it's hard for us to hear the whisper. Like, you have to be able to cultivate moments of stillness in your life. You have to, because think about it, like, the music's always playing. We're in a very overstimulating world today. Like, I think about when I went to New York back in 2000 compared to going to New York now. Just the amount of advertising in Times Square is just like, we're constantly bombarded with advertising. We're constantly bombarded with like social media on like what things need to be. And so sometimes we compare a lot too. And that's the biggest thing too, because it's like you think you need to meet up this expectation because all the cool kids are doing it this way. You know what I mean? And then it may not be your path, and it may not be your journey. But it's not. And sometimes it takes those lightning accidents to really wake you up, because you can be so caught up that it's just like, oh, whatever, I'll just brush it off. Like even today, like I've gotten so much better, but there are times where like I hear the whisper and then I don't listen, and then it takes me like another hour because I didn't fix what I needed to fix, you know what I mean? It's just like, if I only listened the first time. So it is a practice. So the biggest thing is do not beat yourself up. Because you are literally healing like conditioned behavior. The more, like Matt Kahn is one of my favorite teachers on YouTube. He was talking about essentially like, think of it as like a bank account, and you're in this negative, you're in the red. And as you do the steps gradually, you start to lessen that red, and then you'll eventually get to that black, that 0 point. And then you can keep adding on, and then that's kind of like the same reference as like the cup overflowing. You know what I mean? So you're not going to be able to really hear if you're not taking care of yourself and putting your needs and your priorities, like yourself first. Like the boundaries are crucial.
For sure. And especially as a kapha and in the server archetype, it's to heal and to make sure everyone else is okay. And they oftentimes put everyone else before them, but end up being resentful at the same time.
That was me. Like, there was a point where, like, I was such a people pleaser just to be liked because I was, like, the thicker girl because I was already depressed. And then, like, at the same time, I've always been that old soul. So to, like, relate with people my age has always been a struggle for me up until very recently, because now, luckily, I'm around more conscious people that are, like, aware. And I'm like, wow, I'm not alone in this, you know? Yes. But, yeah, it's just been that whole experience, too, has just been, like, honoring the journey up until this point, you know, because I needed to go through those moments where I didn't listen to my guides, and I needed to go through that. Like, all of that has been perfect up until this point, because now it's kind of like I can see both sides, you know what I mean? And being the Gemini, it's like we've got the two worlds. It's like this. It's like we can see, like we can be able to like understand both sides and come from that own perspective of like inclusive, you know. But like when you're trying to give to everyone else, but you're not giving back to yourself, like you're dried out, you're uninspired, you're resentful, you're depressed. Like all of those really lower, like victim. Like you become the victim of your life. When you're like, oh, I thought I was doing a good thing. But then when you become the victim, that's when it's just like, you're screwed. Like you can't be in that victim mindset. You're not going to live your life to the fullest and to your highest potential if you're stuck in that victim mentality. So for me, what's been really the shift is like remembering that life is happening for you, not to you. You know what I mean? So it's like being able to shift that perspective and being able to be like, oh, like even when the crappy things come up, it's like there's a lesson behind this that I need to learn because it's a repeated pattern. And I need to be able to like be conscious enough to be aware of it. That's the biggest step, because that's when you can start changing it. And when we come in this society like that's so conditioned, like the Western culture is so conditioned that I remember when I came back from Thailand after living in Thailand for 6 weeks, and I came back to America and I walked into a bar just to even have like clean cups or like a real working toilet. Like I was in a culture shock just coming back for 6 weeks, you know, and just like living in that Eastern mindset for so long, and then coming back here, it's like, whoa. But then again, the United States is still developing. Like we're still young. So that's why we're going through a lot of this stuff too. So it's also really being able to like be centered in yourself, to not allow what's going on in the world outside you to really steer you. Being like, oh yeah, like that is just pain that's coming up to be healed. That's the biggest takeaway that you can really connect with your guides about, is like, this is happening because it needs to either wake people up or it's because it's coming up to the surface, to the light, you know? So that's a really big one. And that will really help you navigate through the changing times we're going through right now. Get out of that victim mentality is everything, though.
Definitely. And I think a lot of people, they say, well, I didn't grow up in a spiritual family, or I didn't have any mentors, or I don't have a spiritual community around me, aka I can't do it. And I mean, I think both of us can relate to, neither of us had spiritual friends and communities and stuff like that growing up. We grew up totally distant from that, and our parents aren't like that either, but we still found it. So for all of the people out there that feel like they're alone, like, what do you recommend they can do to just start educating themselves and vibrating more at this frequency?
Well, first of all, you definitely need to get out of your comfort zone, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And you need to be able to cultivate yourself in spaces of like-minded people, of things that just interest you. Like, you know, for me, like, even though I'm not a music journalist anymore, I still go to music festivals, and that's a huge soul family of mine, you know? So it's like, even though I don't see them all the time, I will travel like every so months or whatever. I teach at them now. But, like, I'm traveling to see my community. And in the meantime, like, we still have social media and stuff, so you can still keep in touch with people if you really want it. But the thing is like, this is your life. That's it. Like, we've been so conditioned in this society to have everything just thrown at us. You know, it's just, like, easy. You know, it's like we can call Postmates and they can come and drop off food. Like, there's just things that are so... Amazon Prime, you can order something, have things in 2 days. Like, we have become such a society of like instant gratification, And so the thing is as soon as you allow yourself to think that something outside of you is going to bring the happiness,
Right.
that's the biggest mistake that you can do for yourself. So if you really want to be able to cultivate these spaces, you have to first cultivate that within yourself first.
Right.
Because then you become a magnet to more of that.
Exactly.
Because if you keep thinking something's outside of you, then not only is that an illusion, but you're disempowering yourself.
For sure. And also, like, you have to become that light that you want in your life. Like,
you have to be the change, be the light that you wish to see. Like,
exactly.
You have to emanate and embody that so that you can have that come back at you.
Exactly. Like, I see a lot of people who they see someone that has a light and they want that, but instead of saying, okay, well, how can I have more qualities like that? They like almost gravitate that person. That person
the energy
becomes,
vampires.
Yeah, and it's like they become an idol, but at the same time, there's like resentfulness.
Okay, that's exactly what we're changing out of. So as a Kundalini yoga teacher, like the whole thing is like I'm a teacher about the Aquarian age, which is what happened after 2012. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, we are shifting from the Piscean age, which we had around before, like after Christ, mm-hmm. around that area up until about 2012. That shift is like the idolization was there because it was the Pisces is a masculine energy.
Exactly.
And the Pisces are at the bottom of the feet too, so it's like the bottom of the wheel. But the thing is that when we do these astrological shifts in terms of changing of the times, it's going counterclockwise.
Right.
So it's going to go up like to the Aquarius, and Aquarius is more feminine, more community based, more of that kind of like being who you are. And we had the idolization as part of the patriarchy, as part of that old age was like about like thinking. That's why like all the avatars of like Jesus and all these other people, it's like, oh, like strive to be that. But now we're at that space where it's like, you are that. Like you are the Buddha, you are the Jesus, you are the Mary Magdalene, you are the Kuan Yin. Because when you realize that there is no separation, which a lot of them didn't really realize that on a long time. But when there is no separation and you are those same things, it's just like to embody those things is to be at your highest truth as well.
Exactly. Yes. Like I know both of us are super into the goddesses and call upon them all the time. And people are like, so are you a Hindu? Like, I don't get it. I'm like, no, because I see all of these goddesses inside of myself and I call upon her in different situations. If I need strength, I ask for Durga to show up and come through. And there's
Kali for destruction.
Saraswati is my go-to for creativity, Lakshmi for abundance. And there's a great book, Awakening Shakti, that goes through a lot of the goddesses and how you can call upon them if that's something you guys are interested in. But what you're saying, and that I totally agree with, is that these goddesses are us. We are already there. And it just takes owning that part of us and not being afraid of her anymore, not being afraid of our own power. And that's how we become that light that we are so seeking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's also interesting too, because like more than ever, the lines of borders are becoming thinner, you know, because now we have social media where it's like if something's happening across the world, like we can hear about it in the States, you know what I mean? So there is more of that like unison, and like the world is getting smaller too. So like all these other influences, and you know, we're traveling more, and I think a lot of our generation, we're very more open to what's going on because we're seeing that the system up until now has not been working.
Exactly. And I talked about in a previous podcast episode that the internet is inherently feminine because it is spreading, it is the flowing of communication. Your relationship with the internet is like your relationship with the future and the feminine and change. So like seeing the internet as like, wow, this is demolishing borders, this is amazing, instead of seeing it as that destruction. Whatever you see it as, that's what it will bring forth in your life.
Yeah, you are magnetizing the experience you want to have. Exactly. So that's why it's so important to be aware of your thoughts, but also like be human about it, and like don't beat yourself up. Like you can't just be all high vibe all the time. If you get low, be low, but you have the ability to get out of it. Don't be low for too long, because you need that dirt for the flower to grow. Exactly. The lotus grows in the mud.
Yes. And that's why I want to also talk about shamanism, which is something that we are both super attracted to. And I think a lot of it is because it's root chakra. It is earth. It is grounded. It is sometimes ugly and grunting and like crazy to look at when you're seeing shamanic rituals. But that's what is so beautiful about it, because it's not just being like, oh, all esoteric up here, high vibe. It's also being like, yes, my feet are in the soil and I'm feeling the grunt of the earth. And that is just as sacred of an experience.
Well, the earth is our mother.
Yes.
Right? So we have become a society up until, well, people are slowly waking up again, where we've been so consumed with our technology, we've been so consumed with like the buildings and stuff like that, that people are completely disconnecting with nature. Think about it this way. I mean, we're all guilty of it. How many people are you going to the beach and are just on their phones the whole time?
Oh, yeah. Or even reading a book.
Yeah. They're not connecting with nature. Like, yes, they're outside, but to be able to connect with nature, like all of the older wise women would live by the beach.
Right.
Because they would hear, that's where they would get the message from spirit and all those things. Like, I live in the desert. You know, like Jesus, for instance, was in the desert for 40 days trying to figure it out. Like, there's a lot of symbolism in the desert of like spiritual awakening and all those things too. Like, because the thing is like nature communicates on at the frequency of 532 hertz. Like, it's a higher frequency that nature is constantly communicating, constantly growing. Like, Mother Nature, she will wake you up. Like, I'm talking about elemental things. Like, I'm a firm believer. I know when things are balanced in my life, when the weather is balanced. Like, I've seen like me shift the weather. I've seen it. Like, I've seen winds come. I've seen rain, lightning. You know, I've seen these things happen based off of where I am in my life, because the elements are within me too. So if I'm imbalanced, there's elements in my body that are probably imbalanced too, and they're going to act out. So if a real way to heal the planet is to balance your own body.
Yes.
Because the inner creates the outer.
Right.
You know, and again, like there's been a huge chunk of our time in the past few years where like we were so disassociated with our body because we're more consumed on getting the new iPhone or being with this technology or showing this, and like really forgetting those like instinctual back to basic things. And I think that's why you're seeing more like communal like gardens coming up. You're seeing more sustainable like housing coming up. You're seeing people want to connect with nature again, and people want to like get their feet dirty again, and like kids, like, you know, we want kids to like grow their own gardens again, and like all these like very human things. But the thing is we've had so much artificial intelligence around us too, with like the smartphones and all these other things, that more than ever we really have to balance that connection and that communion with nature, because the radiation that's coming from our Wi-Fi and our phones is not healthy. That's why we have a very low, people are having harder times conceived today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So having that awareness of just like not trying to be on your technology too much and being more connected to nature, that is also extremely empowering.
And I think a lot of people, I know I feel it all the time as entrepreneurs, you feel like you always need to be doing something. That I catch myself the moment the yoga class ends, I'm running to my phone to see what texts and emails I have. And it's so hard to disconnect, because at the same time, when you're super passionate, you want to be performing all the time because you're doing what you love. So we're kind of stuck in this, like, should I spend the day creating content or like being in nature? You
need both, because the nature will help you fill your cup.
Exactly.
And the thing is also with like our phones and things, while they're great again, and yes, we're communicating, like I met you through Instagram and now I'm sitting here talking with you. So there are definitely perks, but we need to be able to have boundaries with our technology and with how much we're sharing too. And that's something I'm working on. Like I'm doing granted, we're filming this at 11 o'clock at night because we're those people.
I don't sleep, so.
But like I'm working on doing no computer after 7 o'clock. Like that's what I'm striving to achieve more. And like 2 nights ago, for instance, I turned off my phone. I unplugged my Apple TV. Like I unplugged my TV from the wall. And what did I do? I listened to vinyl.
Beautiful.
I listened to vinyl. I danced. I like hung out with my dog. I pulled cards. I dusted my whole space. Like I cleaned,
it's like a little
and like
retreat.
Yeah, it was nice to like have my phone turn off, and like even like, the worst thing you can do is have your phone by your bed.
Yeah.
You know? And so now like I'm slowly waiting, because it wasn't Prime, but I'm waiting from Amazon for like an analog clock. Like I want a real clock again, because it's nice to have that clock, but like I don't want to have my phone next to me to be my alarm.
Right.
So even when you first wake up in the morning and be like, no, I'm not going to go straight to my phone and check to see like who's on, like how many Instagram likes I got, or you know, like how many emails or things like that.
So Danielle Laporte, who we're both big fans of, I was listening to her talk on someone's podcast, and she's like, people always ask me about my morning routine. She's like, I wake up and I check my phone the first thing in the morning, and she's like, I don't think anything's wrong with that because I just want to feel like people love me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, like
that's a good way to shift.
Yeah, and I was like, well, so you know, like maybe it's not like I definitely look at my phone first thing in the morning, but I'm not like answering emails. I just like want to see like I get the most amazing DMs from people, and everyone's so nice, and I'm like, this is a great way to start my day. But then I put it down, and I'm like,
yeah, but some people don't. Some people will stick with it, and like. Yeah. With me, like, I know right away, like, if I first wake up and I go straight into my sadhana and do my meditation right away, I'm having a much clearer day.
Right.
That's the truth.
Yes.
That is the truth. Like,
and if knowing yourself.
If I'm taking the time for me, like, to, like, disconnect for a bit because I feel like I'm very, like, out there and I'm very vulnerable, but if I'm allowing myself to, like, connect, and I can feel the difference if I put my sadhana later in the day, or if I like if I go run straight to this. Mm-hmm. But that's again, that's being able to cultivate my own practice and like understanding my own. Right. Everyone does different things, but for me, I'm really working on like not being on my phone so much. And I think a lot of that was traveling around a lot. Right. Like when I was traveling, like even when we were in Costa Rica, when we were at Envision, like my phone went swimming in the waterfall, and I didn't have my phone for like 2 weeks, and it was like so magical.
Yeah.
I'm like using like Instagram on an iPad, and like it was like the weirdest thing, but whatever.
That happened to me in Bali. It's when the universe is like, get off your phone.
Yeah, totally. It's like integrate. Like to me, it was like that phone went away because it was like you need to integrate what's going on around you, and I think that's what's like. You know, in LA, like I love it. It's just it makes me chuckle. Like all the people are just like on their phones, like filming and stuff, and I'm like, wow, like that's that lifestyle. And it may work for some people, but for me, like I don't want that. You know what I mean? That's also it's really important to know what you want and what you don't want.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, I see all the time. I see like blogger events, and everyone gets like FOMO, but I'm like looking at their videos and everyone's on their phone. I'm like, whoa, how are these 8 people that are together Instagram storing this all at the same time? Like, was there any dialogue going on? And I see it too. You know, you go out to dinner and everyone's on their phone.
I just wish there's like my thing is like I love the technology, but I really wish to see more of the human interaction and the human talking again. Like I love the idea of like friends coming together and everyone putting their phone in the middle, and whoever grabs it first, like you fucked up. No, just kidding. But like seeing that whole kind of idea, because I think it's really important to have those interpersonal communications, especially since like most of my friends don't live near me. Like I'm in the desert. Like I don't hang out with anyone. I hang out with my dog, and like that's cool. And now I'm cultivating community out in Joshua Tree, but I have all my friends, like all my close friends I see at festivals, or they live in like LA or San Diego or out of state or even other countries. And so I rely on that. But then it's also finding peace within myself too. You know, like a lot of people, the problem is with our technology is a lot of people will go straight to this because they can't enjoy like what's happening in front of them.
Right. Exactly.
So that's where you have to be careful, because there's healthy habits.
Boundaries.
There's healthy habits with the technology, and then there's not so healthy habits.
Yes.
And it's being aware of that and being honest about it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I definitely believe that just like in everything in life, like anything can be your medicine or your poison.
Yeah. And we're the last generation. Like, I mean, I'm turning 28 in a few weeks. So like the late 80s, early 90s kid, we're the last generation to remember what life was like pre and post technology.
I was literally just saying that on one of the past podcast episodes. That's why
we're so rad. Like that's why our generation's so cool.
No, but we picked the best time to reincarnate because we got to experience the best of both worlds.
Yeah, really. Like think about it. Babies today will always know what life is like with a phone.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And I mean, so many, you know, I see these parents and their kids are acting up and they like stuff.
Give them the iPad. Ugh, that's my biggest pet peeve.
And it's like, part of me is like, you know, how can I judge them? I've never had kids. Like, I know it's probably really hard and it gets them to be quiet, but.
There's other things though too that you can color. You can, you know what I mean?
I remember
like
being
things
so
like that.
bored at restaurants because my parents would like be talking to people for hours and I would just like draw on the menus and like play under the table. Like, I don't think kids do that anymore.
No,
no one
not
uses
as much.
Yeah.
Well, that's why like I'm super great. Like I believe like something I'm extremely passionate about is helping create a conscious generation. Like I told the universe like very recently, I was like, I want a baby in like 3 years. Like I want to have kids. Like I know I was born to be a mother. Yes. I know that.
I feel the same way.
With that, like, I want to make sure that my kids, like, I want my kids to go to festivals. Like, my babies are going to be at freaking Burning Man and stuff for sure. Like, I want my kids to be able to experience cultures, and I want them to experience, like, growing their own foods and things like that. And, like, luckily now that it's been, like, 6 years since I've graduated college, like, now some of my friends are having kids, and they're they're a conscious family. And I think that's so beautiful, and I think that's what's going to help really heal the planet. Like, they're teaching their kids how to meditate.
Yes.
They're teaching their kids about, like, sharing and community. These kids aren't asking for iPads, and these kids aren't asking for that. But it's like the generation above us are those parents that are the ones that just, like, throw the iPads.
Right.
Or they had kids at a really young age that are like, I'm still trying to figure out, like, these parents are like, I'm still trying to figure out my life too.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot, and I think you can still have kids have iPad time and also have meditation time.
Yeah, but that's going to be the balance that we're going to have to cultivate.
And we have to have that balance ourselves.
Within
to teach
ourselves.
our
Yeah,
kids.
totally. It's like that same thing. We're becoming a magnet.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Like, our kids might see us just always on our phones.
and
gonna
they're
think it's the way to
sponges,
be.
so they behave.
Exactly.
They're going to behave exactly as we are.
Oh, yeah.
So
I remember being a kid and, like, picking up my pretend phone and pretending I was my dad and, like, being like, I have a business call. Don't talk to me.
Totally. Like the way that, like, I would, like, pretend to, like, change my doll's diapers or, like, things like
for
that. Just
sure.
being that mom and seeing, because, like, I grew up from an extremely huge family. Like, my dad's one of 8. So there's 14 grandkids and I was number 4. So I, like, changed diapers since I was, like, 6 years old. You know what I mean? And, like, just seeing that too. But then it's just interesting to see, like, the biggest thing for me personally with my journey has been, like, I've wanted to heal myself and really go through my things so that it doesn't get passed down to my kids, like healing those ancestral wounds and that ancestral karma.
Yes, that's definitely something that I'd love to dive in more about. So I talked about this before, but ancestral wounds are basically things that have happened to us, not in this lifetime, but maybe in our grandmothers or great grandmothers or far before that. And we don't realize that we are carrying on that trauma. So for you, Sabrina, like, how did you discover you had some of these ancestral wounds and what did you do about it?
So I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandparents were immigrants from Italy. And, you know, it was like during that Great Depression era, super poor. And, you know, there's being raised by my grandparents, it was always like, my grandma would always say, oh, be careful, it's danger out there. Every time I leave her. Today's her birthday, too, so happy birthday, Nana. She's no longer here. But it was always like, be careful, it's danger out there. So I grew up with a mindset of, like, it's a dangerous world.
Yes.
It wasn't until...
And many immigrants have grown up
Totally.
feeling that way.
And then they come in with nothing, and so they become hoarders.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it wasn't until I really started to dive deep into my spiritual work, working with different plant medicines, whether they be psychedelics or working with a connection of plants around me, working with spiritual healers, doing my own healing, that I was like, wait, this is not normal. Like, you know, like that's part of that victim mindset. And so having all of those victim things and then being able to be conscious enough to see my own family's patterns and recognizing those patterns and being like, whoa, hold the brakes. Like, I don't want that, because the whole thing is like, especially as women, we are in our grandmother's womb. Like, we are in the eggs, we are in the cells. Like, our cells are in our grandmothers when they're in their mothers and our great grandmothers. So it's going to be passed down time and time again.
And they say the soul often skips a generation, that you often are more connected to your grandmother than your own mother, because your mother was brought here to be your teacher. But your grandmother is like your soul sister.
Yeah,
in a way.
totally. And my grandmother raised me, and we were both like Geminis, and like she was a pain in the ass, but like she was like had a big heart. But that was the thing too. My grandma was very selfish, but she was also very selfless in a way. Like she loved to give and all those things. And there's just been, and then being from like such a huge family, there's so many family dynamics too, that it's like recognizing those patterns and being like, whoa, like I don't, you know, like those don't work for me.
Right.
And that's also me reclaiming my own sovereignty and choosing my own life and being like, this is how my family has behaved. That doesn't resonate with me. Like, I'm super grateful. Like, having gratitude.
And maybe you chose that family so you could see those things.
Oh, my family has been my biggest teacher.
Yes.
You know, it's like my mom, love her to death, but she's like so in her masculine, she's so hard-headed, and like she's like afraid to like try things. My dad's very free flowing. My grandmother very controlling, but like very like in that space. But then it's also the biggest thing about the ancestors too is seeing them as the inner child. Like recognizing anyone you meet, their inner child. And especially like generations before, they were very beaten and abused by like, you know, like there was like the whips and,
It
you
was
know,
the norm then.
it was totally fine. And that is trauma.
Yeah.
That is trauma. It's stored in our cells. It's stored in our body. It's stored in our auric, energetic body.
Yes.
You know? And so...
And even now in our DNA, science is finding that traumas that your grandmother went through has actually altered your DNA.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I love Kundalini Yoga so much, is because you are doing these practices to really... Your brain is plastic. So you doing these different mudras and breath and different kriyas, which are like these recipes is the best way to describe it. Like doing these things and doing them for 40-day practices, you are literally healing your subconscious mind and you are starting to shift things around. Like since becoming a Kundalini Yoga teacher 3 years ago, like I've seen my life change dramatically because I'm aware of these patterns and I can change it and being like, this no longer serves me. Thank you so much for being here, because you have to be in that space of gratitude. You can't beat yourself up for where you've been or where you're going.
Right.
The biggest thing is you can't beat yourself up for where you've been. Like, I've done some crazy stuff. You know, straight up. Like, I've done crazy stuff, and it's okay. But at the same time, it's allowed me to learn, and it's allowed me to grow. But being aware and being like, I want to change this for my future kids so that they don't have to go through this again, I'm going to do what it takes.
Yes, and it's all about just knowing that somehow your soul chose all of these things. Your soul chose that to go down that crazy route so you can have the wisdom that you have right now.
Well, it gives me that space of empathy, because I have this tattoo on my arm, and I got it after my grandma died, and it's from Nicholas Sparks' Walk to Remember, my favorite movie. But it says in Italian, without suffering, there would be no compassion. Because you need to be able to see that suffering within yourself too. And then once you've been able to change that, you can come from that space of compassion and you can understand and be more softer and more gentle with the world.
Absolutely. So, wow. So, I mean, we've gone under so many different topics that I feel like we need to talk 10 more times about. So, for the listener out there who's like, okay, I'm vibing with this stuff, like, where do I get started? Like, what are, like, the first steps you would take for someone who wants to dive into being more in touch with their spiritual self and become their own healer, most importantly?
Yeah, the biggest thing is to, like, be like, I want this for me. You don't want it for someone else. You don't want it to, like, try to fit in. You don't want it to please someone else. Like, you need to want this for you. The best thing I would say to start is to definitely start with trying to do a meditation practice of some sort, even if that's just 20 minutes of cooking or like 20, like whatever it is that really allows you to just like wind down.
Well, we were always the ones cooking on the retreat.
I know. That's true. Well, my dad's a chef, and so I grew up, and my grandfather was a chef. That's part of my ancestral thing. So it's just like that to me is a meditation. Like a meditation doesn't mean you have to sit in silence with Gyan Mudra in an easy pose and just like not have any thoughts. Like that's meditation for some, but it doesn't work for everyone else.
And it's in the masculine.
Doesn't work for everyone else. My meditations, I do Kundalini Yoga meditations because to me it's like I'm chanting mantra. I've got like that ADD mindset, so it's like, oh, I'm doing mudras, I'm chanting mantra, and it helps, and that's what works for me. Like, but yeah, I would say the biggest thing is just to feel what feels right to you. Like, there's so many different routes you can explore. Yoga was really a great introduction for me. That really like catapulted me to really jump back on my spiritual journey again. So I've been practicing yoga for like 10 years now. And so that was really, and I was like young, you know, I was like 18 when I was first practicing yoga. And that really helped me in a way to like really start opening the doors.
Everyone's gateway.
Yeah. I would say really just like try to find a yoga practice that works for you. Like I teach Kundalini Yoga, which is more about the yoga of awareness, and it's more about the yoga of the Aquarian age and being able to like navigate through these times and space. That yoga works for me. Some people like Ashtanga yoga. Some people like Vinyasa. I even do aerial yoga. That's been really meditative for me because it's allowing me to surrender.
Right.
So it's just like seeing yourself for where you are, like cultivating like journaling, but really the quiet time and connecting with nature, I would say is really a really good first step. And also being aware of what you're eating. That's really important. Like, if you're eating all the shit all the time, you're going to feel like shit all the time.
Absolutely. And you were saying how your gallstones, you've released how many?
Oh, I've released like over 350 gallstones.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what message do you think that was sending?
The gallstones essentially come up from repressed anger. And there were so many things I was angry about because I was in that victim mindset for so long. So being angry at the world or being angry that like things weren't happening on my terms. Right. And that's the biggest thing. It's like, it's not about your terms. It's about like, it's like, what is like the universe's terms? What are like, what's the divine's terms?
Right.
Because then that's where you start to be in that manipulation kind of control thing. And the universe will be like, ha ha ha, struck by lightning, like.
Right. And I feel like so many of us, we want to like download enlightenment. We're like, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Like
that's the thing. Like when I was first like in my shit, and I was like dealing with like a partner, and I was like, I'm better now. I'm healed. He could see right through that. He's like, yeah, okay, this bitch is out of her rocker, because I was, but like I was in denial. That like there was work for me to do, like the spiritual bypassing, like the denial. You cannot, like, you have to be, if you are going to be in this path, you have to be committed. You can't go back.
For sure. I mean, once you've seen your shit, you can't
go back. You can't go back, nor do you want to go back.
Exactly.
Because then you're not living authentically, and that's something I'm very passionate about. Like, be real, be authentic, and like be vulnerable. Because that's you living for you, and that's where people will love you for you.
Right.
You don't need to be like everyone else around you. Like,
and if people say that you've changed, like that's a compliment because you're supposed to.
God, it's like I'm planning my high school 10-year reunion right now, and I've definitely changed. Like if I were the same person.
Imagine if you were an 18-year-old. Like,
oh, God, woof. Like I can't even imagine being a 23-year-old again. Like,
I mean, especially right now, it's like we are all on like a treadmill. Like the universe is just going so fast in growth just because of what's happening in the stars right now. Just whatever we think becomes instantly.
Oh, totally.
And if we can tap into that,
we're so sensitive too with what's going on, and we're like, we have the Midas touch right now.
Exactly.
So we are really manifesting whatever it is that like.
Exactly.
You gotta be careful.
So be careful what you wish for.
Trust me, because I was like, there's things that I wish for, and I'm still like working to get those things, and I was like, oh God. But you know what? I know it'll be worth it all in the end. It's just like, there's just been things with my own life and like the life that I've wanted to live, and that means sacrifice. I've had to sacrifice a lot to be to where I want, like I have like big dreams, and I'm always like revamping like the way that I feel like it's supposed to look, because as I evolve, like what I want changes too.
Well, is it as much sacrifice, or is it maybe just letting go?
That's the thing. It depends on the mindset, you know? Some things, like, there are things, like, like, I'm not going out as much. It's definitely that evolving.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't be going out as much as most of my other friends. Like,
is that a sacrifice, or is that, yes, you get to spend your weekends, like, creating
in a while, for the beginning, it definitely felt like a sacrifice. Like, it felt like that was that victim, like, oh, God, like, I feel like I'm wasting my youth away, Right. But in the end, I'm like, dude, I'm going to have, like, such a bomb life down the line, and I'm, like, cultivating a bomb life for myself now. Like,
for sure.
All of this is chilling. Like, I'm chilling. But it's taken time for me to do that, because that's part of that was imbalanced for a long time, too. Yeah,
I mean, I think exactly. Like, I feel like when you are at your highest self, nothing is a sacrifice, because everything that you are putting your energy into is worth it.
And it goes back to the things like everything's happening for you, not to you.
Exactly.
And when you're in the muck that's where that victim mentality comes in. It's like, I had to sacrifice so much. But like, I was just like with some friends yesterday, like friends that I went to college with, that some I don't really hang out with anymore. And I'm like, wow, like, I'm really happy I'm not on that path anymore. You know what I mean?
Right, because all those nights you sacrificed of not going out. Imagine if you didn't sacrifice them
and
you went out.
It's the FOMO,
right.
Like fear of missing out stuff. You know what I mean? Totally. But then again, it's that boundary.
Yeah. And I think that's what's cool about social media is like now, at least all the people I follow, they're like Friday night, like working on my new blog post.
Dude, are you kidding me? My favorite Friday nights are like self-care Fridays.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want and I grew up in like festival, like rave culture. So it was like festivals every weekend, like when I was doing Peace Love EDM, like I was going to shows every weekend, like doing drugs like every weekend, like no sleep, and just like listening to like progressive house to keep me going when I wasn't at a festival. It was just like no chill time, just like tune, tune, tune all the time.
And all of that is also an escape.
It was an escape because that's what led me to like the path that like, oh, you're getting struck by lightning, bitch, boom. And then like I definitely changed the music that I listen to now. Like I'm listening to more of the stuff I listened to before, more like chill music, just because I can't have my body beating at those like
like maybe you can go to
at those
festival.
BPMs anymore.
I can't bump it up BPM. And like you can now go to a festival and like have a cool experience there, dead sober, and still have even a better time because you're actually feeling things.
Well, that's the thing. I've been the past 5 festivals I've been to. I did Burning Man for 9 days sober. And that was a huge testament of growth and strength for me because some people are like, oh, I have to be fucked up to go to a festival. And I'm like, I used to be that person too. But then when I was like in my shit, I was like cold, sober from me, everything. Like I was just like, I need to like try to do clean, and like no drugs, no dairy, no nothing. Like I was just like doing anything that I could to try to figure out what was my right path, and I'm too sensitive now to be able to do substances at festivals. It is what it is.
Well,
like,
when you're spiritual, it doesn't
I don't need it
anymore.
I don't need it. Yeah, like I was like when we went to Envision, like like I was just
we were raving with my mom.
Yeah, us. Like I was just like high on Kundalini yoga.
Yeah,
and high on being in like the freaking jungle, like partying in the jungle. I was high on being present and being grateful.
And then that high lasts all the time.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, people are always like, oh, back to reality. Ugh,
I know,
God,
like
that
post-festival hangover.
Yeah, that, like, literally, like, is my biggest pet peeve. Like, oh, we gotta go back to reality. Like, either if they're on vacation or it's like, no, fool, like, this is part of your reality.
Right.
You know what I mean? And to me, like, this something I'm extremely passionate about right now is keeping festival cultures sustainable. Because if people are just raging all the time, it's not sustainable. And there's something so beautiful and magical about the community and about these gatherings that it's primal. It goes back to the shamanistic, like,
just
gathering.
With people, dancing, especially the conscious festivals with all the workshops.
Yeah,
and yoga
totally. Like,
that
stuff. Was what was so amazing when we went to Envision. It was like all day was like workshops and lectures and yoga, and all the night was the music. So it was balanced. And also the biggest thing was like the single band use, the single use band. So it was like you paid like $3 and you would get a coupon, and that would be you get a plate and a spoon and a cup, and then you would return it so that there's zero trash in landfills.
And when I went to Envision a few years ago, they did not even have that system. You brought your own everything.
Yeah, you have to bring your own. That's how it is at Burning Man.
Yeah, and like I thought that was so amazing because like I had a cup and a plate and I carried it around with me the whole time.
And those are the things that, like, that's why I want to keep that sustainable, because if we start doing those practices in settings like that, then we can start doing that in the world. Like, I'll bring my bamboo fork and knife with me in my backpack when I go places, or my reusable straw, because, like, straws are such landfills. So it's just being conscious even of our everyday things that we're doing, because we only have one planet. Yes. And that goes back to that shamanistic relationship with nature. It's like Mother Nature is hurting right now, and we came here to restore. And we came here to help heal her. First, we had to do that within ourselves. We had to feel whole and authentic and full in ourselves. While we can still dabble in the meantime of doing that with planet Earth, but to really make drastic changes, you have to make sure that you are strong enough and capable enough and willing enough to do what it takes in the way that still has boundaries and still feels right to you, to really help like make a difference in the world. Because like the amount of trash that we have, and like just the lack of awareness. Our water bottles, like things like that, the amount of plastics, things like those are the things that we have to really be aware of for our kids.
Absolutely. Well, I love that, and I love that you're ending it with a planetary note. Can't believe it's been an hour that's flown by.
I know, we can talk forever.
I know. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us. I think that a lot of us listening could totally relate to your story, and I think that it's a wake-up call, before we all get struck by lightning, to really start living in our truth, get out of the victim mentality, and know that we are creating our surroundings.
You're creating your surroundings. You are the captain of your destiny. Like we can give it up to our guides to help surrender it and help support, get out of our own way. But it's based on our everyday actions that are really contributing to the life that we're here to experience. So that's something I just like, I'm so passionate about because it's sustainability on all levels.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And where can we find you?
So there are a few places you can find me. You can find me at shamanessagodessa.guru because you are your own guru. And you can also find me on Instagram at shamanessagodessa. And yeah, I'm moving up to Joshua Tree right now, and that's like really awesome. So I'm going to be hosting events up in the desert. And
definitely doing there.
Yeah, it's going to be so amazing, just like hanging out with like the aliens from Vortex. I'm just kidding. But, yeah, so I'm usually on those two because, you know, and I'm also on SoundCloud. I have my own podcast, the Sovereign Goddess Podcast. And
I'm interview number 2, guys. So
she is interview number 2. We talked about Ayurveda.
Yes.
And so just podcasting, Sovereign Goddess Podcast on Instagram. You can even find the podcast on SoundCloud and on my website. And I teach Kundalini Yoga. I'm starting to do more workshops online too because I want you to be able to do it wherever you are. And I'm all about the nomad life. So you know, you can pop it up on your phone if you're traveling. The great thing about Kundalini Yoga, most of it you can do it anywhere. Like, that's what's so great. So to be able to shift your mind in like 3 minutes, it's so powerful. So thanks for having me and allowing me to be your first guest and see how this all involves.
Exciting. I know. We're gonna have you come back soon.
Oh yeah, likewise.
Yes. Well, thank you, my dear friend, so much for listening. If you liked this podcast, I would love for you to leave a review. That's how this podcast is seen by more people, so it can inspire more people. And if you have any questions for Sabrina or for me, you can comment on my Instagram at EatFeelFresh or join us in conversation on the Mind Body Balancers Facebook group. I'll have the links to both of those in the show notes, as well as Sabrina's websites and social media links. So thank you so much for tuning in.
Thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next time.